crazy enough to buy an FBO and a flight school, and so far so good. But it's great to see everyone here tonight for kind of the first time in 2 years for many folks. We actually tried to see if we could do it at the firehouse, and they weren't quite ready yet. So here we are. We need a bigger hangar, or at least a bigger meeting room. We're splitting this, and we've got almost as many people waiting outside. So Jeremy's suggestion, which I think was a good one, was we're going to split it into 2 shorter presentations. So this one will kind of race through, and then ask you to step out and let the other folks come in, hear it, and then afterwards, anyone else who wants to stick around for more questions answered, we'll do that. And that's really the best solution we can come up with. We had no idea how many people were going to show up.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jeremy Howard got this all started on Facebook with a simple, hey, who wants to get together? His stage name is St. Louis Approach. You may know him by that. On stage 2, we got Rick Polinsky. I was known as St. Louis Outbound. And I'll let you guys take it over.
Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lisa.
I'm Lisa from Spirit of St. Louis.
From Spirit.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So depending on where you're flying to or from, we'll try to hit the gamut. We'll do brief introductions. I'm Jeremy Howard. I can such a stand up so I can see everyone. I've been in air traffic for almost 12 years now, which feels like forever. I started at Spirit of St. Louis. Lisa was one of my trainers. Her husband Stace was one of my other trainers. He has since retired. I spent 2 years at Spirit, 3.5 years over at Lambert, and now I've been at the TRACON for almost at least 6 years in August. So any questions that you have about approach kind of stuff, I'm going to try to cover some of it up here. This is the 10,000-foot overview of a lot of stuff, and if you've got specific questions, how do I do this? What should I do with this? Can I get an approach at Lambert? Yes. We'll go through all that kind of stuff. This is our room on one side of it. You'll notice it is quite empty. This was built back in 2002 for when American and TWA were still flying, and when American had just bought it. We were all outfitted. This is one side of the wall. We have another side that's got another 10 scopes on it as well. And this is on our midnight operation, so you don't see anybody working it. Depending on the time of day, the other wall looks like this because we just don't have to run the airspace the way that we did back 15, 20 years ago. Airspace in general, if you're looking at a map, this is kind of what it looks like from the Google Maps perspective. This is what we are controlling or in our airspace. Southwest, down to the St. Clair area, not Corolla, we're not quite there. Union is right on the edge. Washington Airport, if you're flying in there, where we do their approaches. All the way up to Eola on the north. Litchfield is in our upper right corner of our airspace. We share it with Springfield and Kansas City Center. And then down to the southeast, we go about 40 miles before you hit Marion is where our airspace stops. We run surface to 15,000 feet, and we have Bravo airspace, and we have Spirit, Alton, downtown, and Scott Air Force Base Deltas in that airspace as well. Later this year in September, we're getting a consolidation completed. We will actually have Springfield, Illinois radar in our building and Peoria, Illinois in our building. So if you decide to fly to Oshkosh, not this year, but next year, then by the time you get there, you will have talked to mostly people in our building the whole way there. This is what our radar scope actually looks like if you're sitting in front of it. This is the blank one in our testing lab, so we're not supposed to show actual live traffic on any of these kinds of things, and we have to get permission just to take a picture in the road. So this is what I've got is what we've gotten permission to actually show. But this is the general radar view of when we're working and Lambert is landing on 30s. All of these different marks and delineations mean something to us, and it also denotes our airspaces, who owns what. We also have the finals depicted out here for all the different airports. On ILSs primarily. Alton, we have all of theirs depicted, although they don't have the NDB anymore. So that one's taken out. And then Scott is down here. This is the Lambert final when you're landing on 30s. This represents our airspace boundaries for who's in arrival and who is working what's on low altitude, who's got departure. So whenever you're flying around, if you're wondering why we assign a specific altitude and you're like, there's nobody out here, it's because I don't own the airspace above or around that one. So especially if you take off out of here, out of downtown, the antenna farm just to the west right there near Webster Groves is 2,600 foot NVA. That's the highest I can climb you to if Lambert is departing on 30s, because that's the top of my airspace. Arrival into St. Louis owns down to 3,600. If you're VFR, I can take you to 31, but we try not to because we've started getting a lot of TCAS RAs from the jetliners going into St. Louis if you're anywhere below the 1,000 feet now. So we're even pushing the VFR boundaries closer to 1,000 feet now when we can. On the northeast side of it is 2,500 feet. So you'll hear 2,600 assigned or 25 or 21 because that's the MVA if you go out to the south. All proprietary stuff, so whenever you're flying in and out, if you are going out, let's say to the east, Lambert's on 30s, and you get the turnaround going out towards the east, you're going to be down low for a little bit unless there's nothing coming into St. Louis. This is sitting on our radar scope just to kind of give you a feel for what we look at. We have what we call IDS. This is where all of our brain is stored. Any kind of approach, any kind of weather information, any kind of anything, NOTAMs, all that stuff is all up here. Chase, you've already seen this in there, so I was like, you can just keep nodding. But all of our airport diagrams, all of our approach plates, everything is up here. So whenever you're asking for a specific approach and you ask us, can I start the approach at, and then you name some obscure fix, and there's silence on the frequency, that's me trying to pull the thing up to find it. So it sounds like I know where it is. It works. I mean, the ones at Washington, we're finally getting adjusted to some of them. So if you say you want to start at WexG, okay, I know where that is, but the ones, even the T fixes going on the RNAV finals and the Creve Core, we have to go back and look at those because it just kind of in one ear out the other and dumps out. So if you ask us for a specific approach starting at something, it's going to take me a minute to find it and make sure I know which point you're trying to start at. We have a volume control and speaker. We can talk to other facilities. When we call them, it comes out the speaker there. This is our telephone system. It's all digital and touch screen. It's called a TEDS. All of our airports around here have one. We can push a button and call a different position, or we can push a button and call one of the other facilities directly. Keyboard is not a QWERTY keyboard, unfortunately, so we type a little bit slower. The center gets QWERTY keyboards. When this system was developed back 25, 30 years ago, this is the STAR system. Replaced one that was even more ancient. This is our new generation that is 20-something years old now. They asked the controllers that were working at the time, do you want a QWERTY keyboard or do you want to stick with this square keyboard that you've been using where it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and it just goes like that? The old and bold guys refuse to change, so we're stuck with this piece of junk instead of having a QWERTY keyboard that we can actually sit there and type something out on. We call this our trackball or a slew ball. It's just like a trackball mouse, just select things. We have different settings on the sides of the radar scope to adjust the different things there. And then the main display, it's a 22-inch radar. If you ever wonder when you're flying around VFR, this is what you look like to us. If you ever call me and ask, is my ADSB working? This is what you look like to us. If you're squawking 1200, this is how you show up on our radar. If you're not squawking anything, if you have your transponder off, we don't see any of this. We'll see this little blue dot. That's it. That's your primary radar return. But when you got your secondary on with your mode C, this is what I'm getting back. This is an altitude readout in hundreds. 2,100 is what he's showing. Lock off the last two zeros. That way we can go up to the flight levels to show 3 digits on that one. The square block just tells me that it's a VFR tag on a secondary radar return. I can click on it, and then it shows 1200, so I can see what code you're actually squawking. Some people are on 1201. If you go out to Highland, to the glider port, they are on, I think, 1203, and that's just so that we know who they are and that they're over there. But this also shows us your airspeed off the last zero, and this is your ground speed. This is not what you're actually doing. It's just what you're showing across the ground. This is your altitude readout whenever I give you a beacon code, this is what you look like. So in this instance, your call sign, if I entered it correctly, shows up there. If you have ADSB and you squawk up a code, I can actually see down here when you put your beacon code in, I can actually see if mine matches what you have entered. There's somebody around here or a couple of people around here, and I don't know who it is because it's blanked out, but there are a couple of people whose ADSB just says VFR, and that is annoying. I don't know who's doing that, but we can't, there's a lot of call signs that we recognize just from repetition, and if we click on it, we can click on the ones like the Billiken flights, and it shows BKN 27, BKN 20, BKN 44, whatever. I can see all of those, but whoever's got VFR in your ADSB, if you're in the room, you don't have to say anything, but please put your call sign in there. We can look those up, and we can't just immediately click on it and it's like, oh, it's a Bonanza. We have to either remember it or look it up online somewhere. The owner, in this case, is which person in the radar room, which scope owns that tag. In this case, D is our low west position, which low altitude is the one that mostly deals with what you guys do. It's surface up to 5,000 feet around most of the airspace, except under the arrivals at St. Louis. A little asterisk, we call it SPLAT at the end, is just a designator that shows me that you're VFR instead of IFR. We have a scratch pad where we can type in 3 letters to tell either a destination airport of where you're going or something that reminds us what you're doing. This one we just put VFR because they're flying around. If you are just going out somewhere and you say you just want traffic advisories in the area, you get JFA because you're just flying around. Aircraft type and a 4-letter identification at the end of it. That's an easy way for us to know what type you are at whenever we ask what type aircraft you are. We're looking for your 4-character identification. And then this letter in the middle is a facility handoff. This is an old one because I haven't changed it, but in this instance, this aircraft belongs to Low West, but I'm in the process of transferring the radar information to P, which was Parks for the downtown airport. It timeshares, so this second line will alternate with this one, so I can get your altitude and your airspeed at the same time. So I'll see it 1 second is one way, then it flips to this screen for the other. So it just goes back and forth between that and that. Flight strips, if you haven't seen one, this is what we look at whenever you've got a flight progress strip. This is just an example going to Nashville. Aircraft type, your beacon code that you're assigned, where you departed or what fix you're going to be coming over, your route of flight as filed, or if we put it in, whatever it is. This is just a 3-letter or 3-digit ID that we use for our computer system that we can keep track of. It doesn't matter anything, you didn't do anything to put that in. So if you get 666, you don't actually know it. Your aircraft type and equipment suffix. The equipment suffix will go in if you file IFR. If we file a VFR or a flight following request, it usually shows up as a slant golf. So if you're not, and you don't have certain capabilities, let us know. We can change it in the system. Request it en route altitude, and then the time that you're supposed to depart is up there. Should you file above 10,000 feet? Used to be 8, now it's 10. If you're at 10,000 feet or above, 11,000 feet or above, you will get what's called a PDR, or a preferred departure routing. If you wanted to go to Nashville and you're filed at 11,000 feet, this is what's going to show up. The center automatically assigns this because at that altitude, when you climb to it, it doesn't know when you're going to actually hit that altitude. But assuming you depart at that altitude, you are now hitting arrival traffic into St. Louis. So it will put you on a route that takes you away from it. So be prepared if you're filed above 10,000 feet for anything, you're going to get something different. If it's a quiet day, holiday, something like that, we can usually get you a direct route. But otherwise, it's going to use something like this. So have your pencil and paper ready. On our radar, when we talk about weather, this is what we look at. This is another part out of our test lab because this would not actually happen, I hope. The black over here is just what the regular screen looks like. The light blue is if we're looking at light precipitation. Moderate shows up with the little dots on there. Heavy shows up in like a mustard yellow, and then extreme, we have dots on the yellow. So whenever we're reading weather to you, area of extreme precipitation at for this Lindbergh flight would be 12 o'clock and a mile. That's what we're looking at. Ours is indicated off of our weather, or off of our ASR radar. So we're seeing something that's updated every 7 seconds. So if you're looking at your weather radar and you're looking at whatever's coming off the dome or off of NextRad or something that is not updated except every 15 minutes or so, we've got something that's live. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. I've had pilots that I'll report heavy precipitation and they'll fly straight through it and say there's nothing there. It's just what our radar sees. We don't know the type of precipitation. We don't know where the cloud buildups are or anything like that. So if you need to fly around those or away from them, please tell me. Emergencies, if you have one, this is what we need to know versus what we want to know. Need to know your call sign, your intentions, and what's the nature of your emergency. That's the most that we really need to know. If that's all that you can muster, if you can even get that out, that helps us tremendously. We'll ask more later if you need souls on board, fuel remaining for the fire department to know how big the fireball is going to be. That's the kind of stuff we get later. So who declares one? We can, you can, or the owner of your aircraft. If you're renting from somebody, they can file it for a call emergency for you. We can also declare it. If you're afraid to do it because you think it's going to be a lot of paperwork and stuff, we're going to declare it for you. We have to fill out the paperwork anyway if there's an emergency. We'll just do it and get out of the way. What to expect? We try to take care of as much as we can. We find whatever nearest airport we can get you to if you need one. We try to set up emergency services, fire trucks, ambulances, whatever you need. We try to get that ahead of time, and we try to handle that on the front side. The Help Me Help You section. This is kind of the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of this one. On your first call to approach, if you call us out of the blue, or if you departed another airport, tell me your aircraft type when you call up. If you just say let's approach, this is November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to start playing Marco Polo, and I'm going to keep going back and forth with you, trying to find you for one. But there's two different ways that we can set up beacon codes. And if you include a call sign initially, and then just kind of give me a little kicker at the end to give me a hint of what you're calling for. In this case, November 1, Skyhawk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with flight following request. Cool. For me, I stop right there at your call sign and I'll come back to you and ask you for the rest of the information that I want. Some people will go ahead and give you a code in our airspace, which for us is a 02 something something code. So if you get a 0201 or something like that, you're getting one of our local codes to start. If you get a 4-digit code that is like in the 4s, the 4000s, you're in Kansas City airspace, we put you into the airspace system. IDENT, please don't do it when you first call us. We have that problem and I don't understand why. It's still a problem, but when you first take off and you call us, a lot of people will say, this is Cessna 12345 with an IDENT and a request. I didn't solicit it, so I can't officially use that. So I will have to actually ask you to do it again, so just be prepared for it. Your current altitude, it's nice to have it when you first check on because I have to verify it if you don't. If you say this is November 12345 with request, now I've got to ask, what's your request? And if you don't say we're 2 miles south of downtown at 1,700 feet, I'm going to have to ask you, verify you are at whatever altitude you show up at because we have to have that radar identified. The flight following information, when you fill it out, I don't think I put it on there. But we have a certain order that we have to type it in on our screen. And if you can do it at the airport with the ground control, a lot of ground controls are busy and don't have time to put that stuff in. But if you've got someone that can do it, by all means, let them do it. We need to know your aircraft identification, where you're going, your type aircraft, and your requested entry altitude. And it's in that order. So for us, you would say this is Cessna or Skyhawk 12345, just off of downtown, request flight following to Marion at 4,000, or I guess that'd be 3,500, something along those regards. I can go ahead and put that in immediately and pop it in, get you a NAS code to be in the airspace system. And then I don't have to give you the 0200 code and then have you change your beacon code again right after I've just given you one. Don't say kilo. This is, it's on the ATC memes everywhere. We hate it when you start your airport identifier with kilo because we know it's kilo. I don't think you're flying to Canada in a diamond. You could, but I don't know what the tailwind is, and I don't think you're going to make it in one swoop. So if you're saying that you're going to Nashville, don't tell me you're going to Kilo Bravo November Alpha, because as soon as you start saying flight following 2, I've already started typing in the rest of it, and as soon as I'm typing as you're talking, so I hear the K and I immediately start typing it, and once I get that in and realize that's not where you're going, I have to backspace through all of that because there's no mouse or anything to go back in a line like you can on a real computer. We're on DOS technology that we're operating with. So if you can avoid the kilo, that would help us out a lot. Practice approaches, if you request a practice approach somewhere, tell me that you have the ATIS there or that you're working on getting it, just something so I know. That's another thing like your altitude that I have to verify, it's required. And please know the runway in use. I'll let you talk about doing the opposite direction with all that kind of stuff. Traffic in sight. Telling me that you have the traffic in sight, awesome. Telling me that you have them on the fish finder, not awesome. I don't know why that's still used or why people still do it. I think it's just because you're letting me know that you're aware of the traffic situation, but until you visually see that person out the door, I'm going to keep issuing traffic to you.
Or if I may interject, talking to them on the other frequency here,
Right.
that doesn't cut it for us and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
I need you to say, I have him in sight. That lets me know, okay, you're VFR, you're following your rules. Ifr cancellation, if you do decide to file IFR and go somewhere, please cancel as soon as practical. A lot of times we have people following you into the airport, and until you cancel your IFR, I have to hold them until I hear those magic words.
And an uncontrolled.
Yeah, uncontrolled. Control airport, you're flying IFR, it cancels on the ground once you land. Uncontrolled, if you're doing an approach and retrieve core, IFR, or Washington, and you land and you don't call us, we start sending out people to find you because we think you've crashed. It's just how it goes, sorry. Frequency change, please acknowledge them. There's been a rash recently of people that will give them a frequency change and they don't answer. That also starts a whole process. I have to keep calling until I get an answer from you, or I have to call the facility that I've switched you to try to get an answer. Did they call you? Or call the center, could get a hold of you, and they'll tell us whether or not you did. So if we give you a frequency, contact Kansas City Center 124.3, Kansas City 1243, November 123. Awesome, we're cool. That's the general part for me. I don't want to overburden stuff. Lisa or
Ready? Hey, I'm Rick Walensky. I'm the air traffic controller here at the St. Louis Downtown Airport. Give you a little background information on me. I've been a controller for 30 years. So I've been here for about 11 years or so. Before that was Champaign and approach control for about 6 years. Before that it was flight service. So I've been in flight service as well. Then I was doing some contract controlling when I got out of the Air Force. I was an Air Force controller for 6 years as well, over at Whiteman Air Force Base. So yeah, every other day we got a phone call saying, hey, there's a UFO out here. And we're like, no, that's not a UFO. And then the farmers would try and shoot at it. So anyways, yeah, so I've been here for about 11 or 12 years. Anyways, so right now we got about 10 controllers in the tower right now. We do various rotations. Pretty much everything JP said up there, we have in our tower as far as like the radar facility goes. We've got a little screen, a little bit smaller than this, like hanging up and stuff. But everything he said about the radar, that's what we have there, and that's what we do to coordinate with the approach control as well. So a lot of the coordination is over landlines and via everything you need to sell too. So in the tower, there's 3 main primary positions. There's the tower position, or local control as we call it. There's the ground control, which taxis you guys out. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then there's the flight path position, which is basically like the secretary of the tower. Basically, if you want to be a flight plan put in, or you have to amend the flight plan, or IFR or something like that, then that's the secretarial position. So there's basically 3 main positions. We usually combine it up into 2 positions: tower, local control, or ground control. So you get balance between those 2. A lot of the times we have planners delivery combined up with ground control, so, but if it's busy, like the World Series or something like that, we will have it split off, you know, so don't always assume that if you're calling up your clearance that local or the ground is combined with clearance. Pretty much, you guys all fly out of here, so you know the drill, you know about VFR towers and operations up there. You know, we do a lot of training here too. It's a rotating door. We're what we call like basically an entry level facility where the new guys come in from the academy, get checked out, probably stay here for about 2 or 3 years, and then go on to bigger and better things. So what I want to do is I want to not so much talk about the airport, but like the specialties of the downtown class Delta surface area. So of course, Delta surface area, surface to 2,000 feet, 4 nautical mile radius. Now, what we have in our Delta airspace is, of course, the arch, right? Everybody and their brother wants to fly by the arch, correct? Okay. So I wanna squash this theory or whatever you want, myth, I guess you could say. Actually, there is no arch tours, believe it or not. So when you guys are all asking for an arch tour, if you ever hear us and really listen to us, come back to you, we'll say transition approved. Because if we were to say arch tour or something like that, that would denote with FSDO or something like that, that there's an actual track or a route that you actually take to go see the arch. So we'll try and get you in front of the arch or whatever you need and stuff and everything like that, but you're probably going to hear transition approved back from us. So we're trying to change the culture of not asking for an arch tour, but you know, from us, from our standpoint, we can't sit there and say arch tour, but we'll try and get you to go by the arch or whatever you need. So,
is there a type of phraseology you prefer when we contact you?
just we want to transition along the river, or you know, or we want to take a look at the arch or something like that. But
Run
just
or something.
yeah, I mean, if you guys say arch tour, there's nothing we can do about it. But on our standpoint, my boss wanted to touch bases with you guys and stuff. There is no official arch tour, so there's no point A to point B where you enter or exit and stuff along the river, east or west of it or whatever. So that leads me into the next segment is the TFRs, the ballpark stadium TFR, which is unique to our airspace as well. So some of you may or may not know that you can go through the stadium TFR as long as you're squawking and talking to air traffic control, either T7, even the approach control or us. As long as you're in radio communication and you're squawking, you know, you're good to go. Now, I wouldn't say flying directly over the stadium is a very smart thing because I'm sure FSDO will be going, oh, who's that, you know, and then they get some phone calls. But as long as you're transitioning and moving along, you know, the actual NOTAM says no circling, loitering, or maneuvering, anything that would, you know, from 9/11 to like you're scoping it out or something like that. But if your track has to be like, you know, into the runway or something like that, and you have to fly by it or something, that's fine. The big thing is as long as you're talking to approach control or you're talking to us with your transition, okay? So flow control, opposite direction approaches. That's a big one for us in this area. For a long while there, they said no opposite direction. We were trying to bring it back because especially here, the ILS, Formula 12s, you still want the ILS. So depending upon the traffic and the situation, we can accommodate you, but there are many rules that we have to where if it's IFR, we can only like let one go and the other guy, like Jeremy said, we have to like hold them out or whatever. Now, if you're doing a VFR practice approach with us, that's different. There's no separation services provided, you maintain VFR, you do it on your own navigation, and you talk to the tower. The one thing that we would ask, at least from our tower, is please be realistic about it. If we're on 12s and you need an ILS and you hear the pattern going crazy and stuff, please use common sense. You can try and get it in later or something like that. So,
So you can give a squawk code that they will know what it is.
yeah. We'll give you a squawk code, like all the stuff you saw up here and stuff. We'll give a squawk because we have
We'll have flight following all the way back.
well, yeah, to the VOR or whatever, you know, and on your way back too.
The flight plan up there, that's like an example mindful of a tower issuing.
Yeah, she'll go into it more too. I'm just covering my kind
Yeah, you can say that we want flat fall, tell ground, we want flat fall onto Carbondale. And
We'll put
workload
it,
permitting, they can put it in.
yeah, we'll put it in the NAS, the National Airspace System, and that'll actually, we'll hand you off to approach control, and then they in turn will hand to whoever.
It takes a little bit off of my load. If they put it in, that you're doing that, then you don't have to call me and repeat your life story. It would already, as soon as you take off, you're already showing that tagged up code on my screen.
Now, the one thing that I would say, that if you are getting VFR flight following, don't leave the frequency until the tower tells you to contact approach, because we've had that happen too, where you've had early frequency changes, and there may be guys coming inbound or outbound. Wait until the tower actually tells you to contact approach, because we may be waiting on the handoff, what we call a handoff. We issue a handoff to them, they have to accept it, and then we tell the pilot to contact approach. Make sense?
Good.
Little bit?
10,500.
First month? Okay. Two more things. So drone activity. This is coming. Drone activity is coming. We've got new rules now at or above 400 feet AGL. We need to put it on the ATIS. So you're going to hear a lot more drone activity in the vicinity of such and such at certain altitudes on the ATIS. Nothing we can do about it. And even our rules, I don't know how it is for Spirit, we have to have 3 people in the tower sometimes when there's drone activity going on. So we have certain parameters to where, certain altitudes and such, and we'll put it on the ATIS as much as possible, and then we have to give advisories too. So my main thing to you guys is, if you see something that's weird or bizarre or whatever, shout it out, let us know. If it's at a certain altitude and it's unauthorized, or it seems like it's flying at you. I mean, I had a medevac out of Children's Hospital, and the drone flew right at him and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, so I was on the phone with Washington.
Maybe it was a UFO.
No, it was a So if you see anything with the drones, shout it out, and you'll hear a lot more about it on the ATIS.
They don't have to talk to you, the drones?
No, the actual owners they have to.
Transponders?
No. They tell you the box and the parameter where it's going to be, the certain altitude that it is, the time frame that it's going to be, and then they actually have to call you before they start it, and then when they terminate it. And while that's going on, we have to put that on the ATIS, like in front of the arch or whatever, or by the rail yards over here. There's a lot of that going
Yeah.
on.
So they have to telephone call you?
Yes, they have to physically call the
Because you
tower.
closed down a runway when the drones were flying around one time, when I was flying. I didn't go to those drones, so they must have not had permission, eh?
Well, that's just it. Maybe it was I wasn't there, so maybe it was unauthorized. You never know, and safety comes first. So yeah.
So we won't see this on our ADSP? No.
It was 30 right.
Well, how are,
We don't even see higher.
and
That's what I was gonna
but we're
ask.
talking about one of those DJI drones, like $1,000 drones. So those could be, we could not see them, just run right into it.
Yeah, but you
Yeah.
guys see birds, eh? Or
We
flocks.
see lots.
Now we can't. We can see primary on the drones if it's big enough.
Yeah.
If that's what you're asking for, we can. And the thing is that's when you get the. Go ahead.
I was a controller at Spirit, and now I'm a licensed Part 107 drone pilot. Also, commercial multi-engine instrument. So I kind of understand how all of this works together. What he's talking about, most of the time the drone is limited to 400 feet AGL.
Right.
Or around a building,
Yeah.
as long as you're not getting into Class Bravo or Delta airspace, you can be 400 feet above that obstacle, that building or power line or whatever. So most of it's not going to apply. It's only when there's a waiver for them to be able to be over 400 feet, which is rare and hard to get. That's what he's talking about.
Oh,
What I'm saying is it's coming, and you're going to hear a lot more on the ATIS.
Weren't they supposed to have transponders? Wasn't that supposed to be the FAA was talking about this?
No transponder, no ADSB. It's
Yeah.
illegal for a drone to have that
As of
Right.
now. They're trying to change it.
so far.
Yeah, trying to change that,
That's
anything over
gonna-
55
Oh,
miles.
that's gonna.
I have a question about drone stuff, because I'm also Part 107, and that's up to if I use the app like AWOL to request authorization, what do you guys see when we
We don't see
detect?
anything.
Well, we-
Nothing.
The controllers, you know, the boxes,
Yeah.
the grid, you can go 200 feet here,
Right, right,
200 feet. I sat with my manager
Sure.
and developed that. We said, okay, you don't have to ask us if you want to stay at below 200 feet here.
Correct.
That's and that's why it's automatically approved.
Gotcha.
Because that's already been decided years ago.
Okay, gotcha.
Answer your question.
Thank you.
All right. So the last,
Last follow, these advisories you're talking about, it'll be on ATIS and whatnot. That's only when it's above 400 feet, greater than 400 feet?
Right,
That's
so
what
not
I-
Or above with the restriction, there's
Yeah.
a box. You can see the thing online of, in this area, there's boxes with altitudes and how high you can go. So if the box was 100 feet and you can't go above 100 feet, if they got a waiver to go up to 300 feet, then it would be out of the ordinary and
The advisory would be something like this, 2 miles west of the St. Louis downtown airport, at or above, or below 500 feet, 18 dollars, something like that. Or
You'll
there-
say drone activity, is that
So
what you
drone
said?
activity, yeah. Or there may be coordinates, I've seen ones with radial and DMA distances within a circumference radius, and it'll give a certain altitude. So just depending upon what the situation is, what they coordinated, is what you'll do in the ATIS and just act accordingly. So, and we'll be able to give you advisories too, so. But like I said, it's coming, so.
You'll see a lot of it with like Valley Sports, they're starting to use drones to get their like transition plates for like if they go out of lose games and stuff, and they go between periods or something, you'll see a lot of that now. I know the fellow guys are finding them, so that's probably one thing you'll see a lot is the guys with Valley Sports.
Yeah, we're seeing on. So the last thing I want to hit on is ADS-B in the cockpit versus controllers. Okay, so you guys got ADS-B, great. That's a great tool for you. Sometimes we've been running into conflicts where, you know, the pilots have been questioning the controllers and stuff, and because they're like, hey, I see this guy on ADS-B, and you automatically assume that you may be following this guy or something. That may not be the case or whatever. We may, you know, there's certain stuff going on. We may be talking to the approach control, or there may be stuff going on with the ground, or maybe there may be different flow controls or whatever, or you may have a VFR guy who doesn't have a transponder behind you and you don't see him or something like that. We would ask that you kind of, you know, listen to us and not just assume, hey, I'm seeing this guy on ADS-B and say, no, I'm following him or whatever, or, you know, call him out in the pattern, because that may not be your sequence, if you guys get what I'm saying. So there may be a little bit more behind the curtain than what you see on an ADS-B. So, you know, we're there to work with you guys too. And if you guys do have questions, like, you know, with your sequence or something, or traffic or something, don't be afraid to ask, you know, because we may, you guys may see something that we don't too. So it's a give and take with the situation, but, you know, there has been times lately to where pilots have been like, you know, no, we're following this guy. And it's like, no, we're not. So it's like, you know, just kind of give and take with the ADS-B. It's a great tool, but remember, it is a tool, and, you know, controller, pilot. What's it?
I got a question. Okay, so the transponders, everybody leaves them on, and they're on the ground. You guys don't emphasize to have them turn it off? Because when I flew the jet out of Boston, if you leave your transponder on when you're on the ground, they get really upset about that. You need to put it on standby. So when I'm on ForeFlight and all that and trying to click on the airport to get the weather, I got all these VFRs on the ground and I can't, you know. So how are you guys about
If you
that?
were at Lambert,
Lambert, you have to.
you're gonna see it
Right.
on the ground. At Spirit, probably at Parks, we don't have that
Oh,
technology.
bummer,
so
because
you're
I
not
see
gonna-
it. I see everybody on my screen.
You're too low.
Yeah.
So we don't have that.
But myself having the equipment in the aircraft, I see everybody on my screen, and because it's so crowded, like I see it, I go, okay, they haven't taken off, they haven't taken. I think, oh, downtown's so busy, there's 8 aircraft, but none of them are in the air. They're all on the ground. And I'm like, why don't they put it on standby? You have no rule to do that. Well, when they start flying a jet, and big airplane ports are gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
They have to put it on standby, because they're gonna get in a lot of trouble.
But there are some major airports that are requiring you to have the transponder on.
Lambert requires you to have it on. And then-
On the
JFK?
ground,
Yeah, we
Yeah, see-
had ground radar that we used over there.
Separately
the
for that?
SC programs. It hits off
Yeah.
super mode C. and it gives us your call sign readback, and that's how we keep track, especially with low IFR.
But it's a low radar, you do that.
It's,
Right.
for us, that's what shows up on the ground stuff, because you're below the ASR. You're not gonna get picked up in the air from that.
Right.
And we had to use it for ground monitoring to know where you were on the airport.